In my neighborhood, something unexpected happened to me. The lady who goes by the name Karen became quite demanding and started threatening me with charges if I didn't meet her demands, which, to be honest, were a bit absurd. Let me put this into context. I'm 19 years old and a college student, living in my parents' modest house in a quiet neighborhood. As we don't have a gardener, I take care of the grass myself in our backyard, which is relatively small. The sun is shining and the exercise is good, so I take the opportunity to mow the lawn of my 3 elderly neighbors, who don't have time or their own mower. I do this willingly, without expecting anything in return, other than a simple bottle of water offered by 2 of them as thanks. However, the third neighbor, Karen, is a different case. She is a strong old woman in her 40s and has her own lawnmower. Strangely, despite offering my services free of charge, she is extremely specific about when and how her lawn should be mowed. The third point is what bothers me the most, as she doesn't allow me to use my own cutter or repair hers, which is in terrible condition. The blades are dull, and the mower is clogged with grass, but she insists I leave it that way. Whenever I try to suggest improvements, she simply says to stop wasting time and do the job her way, as if it were her right, without caring that I already take care of 4 lawns in one day, even in times when that I don't feel well or I'm busy with college. The worst part is that she threatens to call the homeowners association, even though I'm pretty sure a license is not required to cut grass, and it's not a business deal since I'm not charging money. It feels like she's just trying to pressure me into doing what she wants. In retrospect, I should have stopped volunteering to take care of her lawn a long time ago, but I never had the courage to refuse until last week. On a rainy day in July, it was impossible to mow the lawn after the rain, as anyone who has ever done this knows. My neighborhood is quite wooded, so it takes a while for it to dry. Around 5 in the afternoon, I was relaxing and enjoying my free time when suddenly I heard a frantic knocking on my door. Well, calling it a knock would be an understatement, as it felt more like a desperate attempt to invade my space. I couldn't understand most of what she was saying, but words like lazy millennials were thrown my way. Although I'm used to dealing with angry adults, this time the situation was starting to irritate me deeply. Why was she so obsessed with the state of my lawn? At that moment, I was in need of some humor. I told you, with all due respect, that it rained a lot today, and I'm not worried about the weather. Besides, I have company on the way. I couldn't even mow the grass in my own yard today. Please stop pressuring me. The stubborn lady, with her teeth clenched and the veins in her neck standing out, replied that if I didn't cut the grass immediately, she would report me, as she should have done a long time ago. While I could have argued with her about what I didn't like doing, I thought of a better plan. I responded calmly, "Okay, ma'am. Can I at least use my clipper?" She responded hostilely, calling me a snotty-nosed boy and insisting that the work be done the way she wanted. My plan was in action. I picked up her lawnmower and noticed that there were luxury cars parked right next to the lawn, just being washed. I started mowing the grass, but only made it halfway before the mower stopped completely due to the blade clogging and dulling. However, later that day, after a comforting bath and meal, I heard the reactions to my obedience. To my amusement, I heard screams and complaints about why the lawn was only half finished and why all the cars were covered in mud and grass. I only had problems with her because none of my neighbors had a good relationship with her. This lady who acts like a Karen, truly believed that I would be available to do the work for free, whenever she wanted, exactly the way she wanted. It makes me wonder what kind of life experiences she has had to think this is normal. Has this ever happened before? Did she have someone do all the work for her over a long period of time? I wonder if she had previously lived somewhere where people just did what she wanted when she wanted. Why else would she think this is normal? Unless she has had some reference experience in the past where this was acceptable. If so, I would like to know more about this situation and the entire agreement that involved it. The only explanation I can think of is that perhaps when she was a child she had rich parents and used to treat people who worked for her parents that way. But wow, this is malicious obedience at its peak. Let me know what you guys think about this situation and what you would do if you were in my position. On a busy night, I was serving a group of 30 to 40 people, sharing the task with another waiter. The event promised high-quality food and mid-level drinks. A small group, made up of 2 guys and 3 or 4 women, arrived a little before the scheduled time, which was not a problem. In fact, it was even better, as it allowed us to start the drink service gradually. This was in the early 2000s, before the term Chad became popular, but these 2 guys were the perfect examples of outgoing Chads. If they could dress their interlocutors in suits, I'm sure they would. Super Chad number 1 said, "Hey, me and my brother are going to start off with a round of Johnny Walker Blue, and these ladies are going to want some fancy red wine." Super Chad number 2, turning to one of the girls, said, "Once you drink Johnny Blue, you won't want anything else. It changes you, bro." I responded calmly, "If you'd like, I can put those drinks on a separate bill. The event contract calls for Johnny Walker Black, not Blue, and the red wine selection for tonight is more economical." Super Chad number 1 retorted, "This is our party. Just give us what we ask for and don't question it again." Super Chad number 2 added, "Who do you think you are? Just a waiter. We have MBAs. Bring the drinks, kid." I went up to the other waiter and commented that we were in trouble, but the check would probably be substantial for those who didn't know that the Johnny Walker Blue cost 3 to 4 times as much as the black. So a round of drinks for these people cost over $100. The night proceeded exactly as we expected. Nothing seemed to live up to expectations. The appetizers were disappointing, the food was far from satisfactory, there was a lack of bread and there were too many bread dishes. Drinks took a long time to be served, and some people had food while others waited. With 40 people, taking some time to serve everyone was understandable. To further complicate matters, the Chads and their companions were constantly changing seats, forcing others to move so they could talk to whoever they wanted. This made service a real challenge, as we had organized the service according to the number of tables. Surprisingly, most of the table was made up of normal people, without the Chad's arrogant attitude. They understood that waiters are also human beings and enjoyed the food, politely ordering the drinks in the contract. An older gentleman across the table from the Chads apologized for the group's behavior, saying that despite their fancy degrees and good jobs, they didn't know how to behave. I really liked this gentleman. Finally, the Chads began to calm down, and after drinking almost an entire bottle of Johnny Blue, along with all the other food and drinks, it was time for the bill. We started clearing out the dessert plates and serving the last drinks. The older man at the end of the table requested the bill. Wanting to avoid additional interactions with the Chads, I took the bill to him. I explained that I could take care of it whenever he wanted and went to clean the table. A few minutes later, he called me and said that perhaps there was an error in the drinks bill. After all, there was almost $600 worth of Johnny Blue, when the contract I had signed only called for Johnny Black, and there were also some glasses of wine that weren't what was agreed upon. We had indeed been through a turbulent night. Make no mistake, sir, what was ordered was exactly what was consumed. He was incredibly understanding, and I felt bad. Then he asked why I had served the drinks when we clearly had a contract. I said, "Sorry, sir, they told me this was their party, and since I was just a waiter, they told me to shut up and do as they said. So, I did. I'm sorry, I took their word for it." I pointed to them, and he called them. What followed was the biggest fight I have ever witnessed. He continued to say how he was doing something good, but apparently that wasn't enough, how terrible their behavior was that night, and how ashamed he is of them. My favorite quote was when he said, "You see a person's true colors by the way they treat those who work for them," and they showed theirs. So he called me back and said that apparently this was my party. I was wrong. It was their party, and now they would take care of the bill. Oh, and increase the tip to 25%. You deserve this. He turned and left, leaving the Chads with a total bill of about $3,000. I've never seen two grown men look so defeated. I was completely wrong. Where did these two guys think the money would come from to pay for these drinks? They assumed the guy would be fine with it, or maybe they weren't as familiar with the cost of the higher-end version versus the regular version, as the operator explained that it was 3 to 4 times more expensive than the one in the contract. It's amazing how often people treat waiters or anyone in the service industry badly for no apparent reason, just because they think they can get away with acting in a totally terrible and demeaning way, even when the waiter wasn't rude to them. It's good to know that the older man increased the tip to 25%, which equates to $700, assuming it's for the full cost of the meal, not just half, since there were 2 waiters involved. Either way, whether it's $750 or half of that when they split it, it's a significant amount of money for a single meal. So let me know what you would do if you were in the waiter's position in this situation, whether he would consider himself an idiot or not, and why he felt that way. I also shared with my boyfriend the situation about me moving apartments, and then I was upset about my budget apartment. I recently met a guy with whom I share a hobby, and he asked me out. At first, I had some doubts about whether we would work well as a couple due to the age difference. He is 35 and I am 22. Since my apartment is an old house, originally designed as a single-family house, it does not have adequate sound insulation, and the doors creak when someone moves. I was already used to the sounds of other residents, like the guy upstairs who gets up at 4 a.m. to work, or the neighbor next door who watches soap operas until midnight, as well as having friends over on the weekends. I know that when I play music or have friends over, some sound leaks through the walls. So I've never bothered listening to my neighbors, as I understand it goes both ways. However, when my boyfriend started coming over more often, he expressed concerns about the neighbors, which left me in a delicate situation. He wanted to approach them or ask me to send a message on his behalf. However, I refused. For example, on one of the first nights he spent here, around 10 p.m., he asked me to ask my neighbor to turn off her TV. I told him the volume wasn't very loud, but she turned it off around midnight. At 4 a.m., he was very disturbed by the noise from his upstairs neighbor, who was getting ready for work. I explained to him that this was normal since the neighbors started work at 7 a.m. and needed to be ready at 5 a.m. My boyfriend was still trying to sleep, and the next door neighbor had some work calls, which also bothered him. I offered earplugs, but he couldn't sleep with them. He wanted me to intercede so everyone could calm down. Deep down, he made similar comments whenever he heard someone in the building living their lives, especially when he was in bed. I got frustrated with my boyfriend and said, "You know you can't date a 22-year-old like me and not expect to deal with the situations typical of someone my age. My neighbors are great. There are no loud parties on work nights, no one fights shouting, and no one has children." The part about the hot young lady was in sarcastic quotes because those were his words, not mine. He got angry and asked why I was bringing an agent into this situation. I explained that he couldn't expect someone so young and at the same time want someone with more financial resources at home. He was disconnected from the way people my age live. He got irritated with me for mentioning an agent, and even more so when I responded to his neighbor's complaints with "okay, boomer," or told him he could have a rich person's apartment if he preferred. So I found myself questioning whether I was unfair in telling him I couldn't date younger girls and then being bothered by my modest apartment. An update: many people suggested he simply stay at his house. However, it's not an option for me since I don't have a car and buses don't go that far into the suburbs. This would mean he would have to drive 30 minutes from his suburban home to pick me up and another 30 minutes to drive me there, plus an hour round trip in the morning to get me home in time for work. Therefore, it is much more convenient for him to visit me in the city. This whole situation seems strange to me because of the way he is acting, as if it would be absurd to live in a place without soundproofing. I believe that most people who hear this story have already experienced the sounds of neighbors coming through the walls, as it is common in apartments. There's something strange about him. It feels like he's living two completely separate lives. I heard a story about a man who told his girlfriend he worked for the CIA, and she believed it for years, not knowing where he was or what he was doing. She later discovered that he had a real wife and a family that he went to when he went to work at the CIA. Now this story could be real, as a quick Google search revealed that he co-owns a house with a woman who has the same last name. I don't know if she's his current wife, ex-wife, or even his sister, but he's married and acts so mysteriously that he hasn't been able to go to her house for a while. This would make a lot of sense if she was his wife, but there could be other explanations as well. I'm completely stunned now, not knowing what to think. I wonder how you would react to this situation, whether you act like a fool or not, and why. These fascinating stories from Reddit leave us with many questions and mysteries to unravel. If you enjoyed these narratives, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more intriguing content like this. Leave a like if you liked the video and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any surprising stories we'll share here. Thank you so much for watching and being part of the HistoReddit community. Until the next video.